it's like any new business opportunity. There's sort of a no cost entry at this stage. But as people want to get more information, I think they want to control the information, or at least be feeling as though they have the opportunity to, as you said, be more engaged in it. I think just regurgitating a lot of search and commands that have been sort of put in there and through machine learning is not necessarily what people's perception of AI is. AI is there more of an assistant rather than a decision maker.
Hi, this is your host Kamila Hankiewicz, and together with my guests, we discuss how tech changes the way we live and work.
Are you human?
Paul, I've been waiting for this for how many months? How many months we were trying to schedule this?
It's been a while. I think it's. We started. We stopped. I think somewhere around 6 months. So thank you very much for your patience.
So what caused it? Like, where were you? What were you doing? If you can share a little bit of mystery.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot going on the last couple of years with COVID and the impact it's had on lots of things. So we spent really the last 2 years out of COVID just reforming things and cleaning things up, and I think we're in a really healthy position as we start this year. So yeah.
Not so many people outside of your circles know what you do. So maybe you could just give a little bit of overview of where you are with your company and where you're going.
Sure. So I'm with Softbank. In fact, I'm with JCV, which is a subsidiary, 100% subsidiary of Softbank, KK. KK in Japanese is company. So Softbank C, we'll call it, Softbank the company, which is the legacy DNA sort of telco, very successful here in Japan for over 20 years now. About 7 years ago, Softbank decided to create what many would know as the Vision Fund, which is effectively what we refer to as Softbank Group. And when opportunities present themselves from an investment point of view, they also present themselves to create joint ventures here in Japan. So I'm just part of one of the joint ventures called Japan Computer Vision, which is focused on computer vision, face recognition, image recognition, etc. And we were very fortunate. We were placed as an investment, I think, in 2017, incepted in 2019, so it's been 5 years now. And because COVID came at a unique time, it allowed us to sort of develop as a company and develop our technology. So yeah, that's what I do. I'm based here in Tokyo and traveling a little bit the last 12, 18 months, but really focused here in Japan at the moment.
You were not always in technology, right? Like, how did your career start?
Yeah, no, I was not in technology. However, the opportunity to come and work under Softbank as part of something was very exciting to me, not just a few years ago, but probably goes way back. I don't profess to being a technology type person, but very intrigued by the role that technology plays for us. So, I came to Japan 2002. I was fortunate to be with Goldman Sachs for almost 5 years, during which time I did predominantly asset management, non-performing loans type of business. Very interesting. And then left GS and was fortunate to raise some external capital from Soros, and went about building a couple of things there. Got a little bit sort of stopped, obviously, with subprime. It was a good learning experience. Built a few agencies the last few years. Was fortunate to be involved in the process and obviously the exit. And here I am today, so it's been a fun journey so far. I've really enjoyed the last few years with Softbank. I mean, Softbank, what Masayoshi Son has been able to achieve is incredible. There's certainly, it's come with some criticisms, but those criticisms, I think, are valid. And fortunately, last year, as you may have seen, we did the IPO for ARM, which was very successful.
That's why I couldn't get reach of you for those months.
It's been a busy time for lots of people, and we don't necessarily work with ARM directly. However, what I'm excited about in the future for the new entity is hopefully we will get to work with the likes of Arm and so many other great companies that are with the investment portfolio. So, it's very exciting. It hasn't been easy. Obviously, the last couple of years we've sort of corrected ourselves out of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and here we are, starting 2024. And I think everyone would agree being in a better position to embrace how technology plays a part in our lives. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's exciting.
But you are playing it so humble. Like you can tell a little bit about what you are going to do next and where you are positioned with SoftBank.
Yeah, I think Softbank's an amazing company. Amazing leadership, not only here in Japan but globally. There's been lots of opportunities that present themselves from time to time. But about 6 months or so ago, we decided to put a bit more focus into what's happening with OpenAI and ChatGPTs and etc. And I think there's a great opportunity there to try and parlay something from that's hardware related, maybe into software, and then obviously base it on the platform. So can't go too much into detail, but definitely going to
Mm-hmm.
be creating something I think rather exciting this year, something that allows us to again take all the learnings, all the experiences, all the engagements that we've had for the last 3 to 5 years, and hopefully make something really special.
So you are betting like this will be the year of even more bigger expansion of the AI development and the multimodal and maybe even in robotics, right? Because you've been dealing with a bit of both worlds.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, OpenAI, whether it be generative, the predictive element, probably the next future, I think, is interactive, in terms of how we use AI to
Mm-hmm.
probably have a little bit more control. I think where we're at the moment is very much generative AI,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely think the next stage is interactive AI, where you, me, whoever has the ability to influence the AI in terms of what you want it to do for you, rather than at this stage the model is based around more of a sort of expediting a search or inquiries,
Yeah,
etc. So,
you. Mm.
so
And
yeah,
it's not so intelligent yet, right? Like it's like you have to specifically give it instructions. Rather, what you are saying, you would want it to maybe suggest you some more optimal ways of doing things.
correct. Yeah, I think that's definitely what people want. At the end of the day, the model is a subscription model.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like any new business opportunity. There's sort of a no cost entry at this stage. But as people want to get more information, I think they want to control the information, or at least be feeling as though
Yeah.
they have the opportunity to, as you said, be more engaged in it. I think just regurgitating a lot of search and commands that have been sort of put in there and through machine learning is not necessarily what people's perception of AI is. AI is there more of an assistant
Mm-hmm.
rather than a decision maker.
What do you find the most exciting for the next year to like even progress? And what do you use in terms of like intelligent smart machines?
Yeah, I think there are just so many tools that have been created. So I think we're living in an age where now technology, the modern day toolbox is technology. So if you look at it from I don't know, 50, 60 years ago, it was tradesperson had tools that were from a hammer to a measure to a shovel, whatever it might be. But the modern day tools are AI tools. So, I think as long as we can create those tools that help us to uncover or discover aspects of our daily life that make it easier, and so we can focus more on perhaps the strategy aspect or the planning aspect or even the creative aspect. I'm excited about that. As I said, I think really what we see or what we're seeing more of is just this demand for interactive AI versus,
Mm.
as I said earlier, predictive, which was kind of first stage, generative, which is where we are right now. Not to say that we won't continue to have predictive and generative AI, but there will be definitely a demand for more interactive AI.
I know that you've been experimenting and you've been building lots of different technologies and offering in different areas. Like I know that you've been also interested in metaverse. So but your big breakthrough was Japan computer vision. Like how did you narrow your focus there, and why computer vision?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think computer vision was really, I was very interested in how, we have cameras in everything. We have cameras in our phones, we have cameras in our houses, security, cameras are everywhere. And I was fascinated by how you could take the average camera and make it more functional, particularly through building a piece of software and algorithm that effectively allows the average camera, if there's such a thing, the average camera, to be more functional. And then in terms of the focus, it's a really good question because it's really about the consumer insights. It's all about engaging with our customer base, listening, being aware, pivoting, actioning, as you need to, when you hear things that maybe not necessarily what you want to hear, but definitely, I think JCV, together with some of our partners, I think we were very fortunate to pivot and listen to where the market, was heading, and that allowed us the opportunity to create, to date, some pretty special solutions.
So your main focus was always Japan and like Asia, or you were first going after like America or some English-speaking countries and then Japan? Because I guess the perception and the needs are quite different.
Yeah, I think you're referring to computer vision. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think when you look at the number of cameras in use in macro markets, Japan, the US, China, those of course are the big three. So it made sense to try and evolve and create an experience here in Japan. I think we were very fortunate also that, and respect this should always be mentioned, that respect to your competitors. Both NEC, Panasonic, two amazing companies here in Japan, have been in computer vision for a very long time. So there were a lot of learnings and experiences that they had that we were able to, take and adapt and ultimately, be in a position where I think we've caught up to NEC particularly. NEC is a fantastic company. I was recently in Australia presenting with them, and the people they're just incredible. They're very outgoing, very receptive, very sharing, obviously within reason. But it gives us an amazing opportunity to work with some great people.
What other companies are you looking up to?
Yeah, so in terms of the companies that we respect, I mean, obviously it's the usual suspects, the global platforms, the Microsofts, your Googles, your Metas, and so on. At the same time, even here in Japan, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, Panasonic, NEC, there's just, there's an amazing array of Japanese legacy companies, the automakers such as Toyotas and Nissans. I was with Epson recently. Epson's a big printing company, but incredibly, incredibly vast in what they do. So yeah, we probably look at both domestic companies and global companies. In terms of the one that I enjoy following the most at the moment, it's the big two in my sort of focus at the moment, which is Microsoft and Google. Both of them are very well. I think we're all fans of Apple. I think what Apple has done in terms of taking a product and just making it better, and the design and the functionality and et cetera, et cetera. What I'd love to see, to be honest, I'd love to see Japanese companies be successful. More they are very successful here in Japan, very successful. But I would love to see them, ultimately be more competitive on the global stage. And we definitely are seeing that. The last 12 months with the yen weakening and the US dollar being so strong is that Japan's price parity has become competitive.
But apart from that, what do you think is the reason why Japanese companies are so, like, they are successful in Japan, but it's don't you feel it's a bit of a not a clash, but it's difficult for both worlds to understand each other and the way they conduct business, and lots of startups and lots of new companies which are trying to expand to the countries like Japan fail because they don't understand how the business is conducted, how trust is important, and all the things which because you've been there for 3 years now.
22.
Yeah, 22. But lots of companies don't realize how important it is.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not as difficult as it may appear. I think Japan puts quality before everything. So as long as you have a quality mindset, I think you can always be successful here. Obviously, it's had to change, or it is changing due to the competitive nature of other markets close by, such as sourcing in Southeast Asia, or might be mainland China, or even closer. Even Korea is very competitive, or was very competitive until 5 or 6 years ago, 7 years ago, excuse me. So, I think as long as you have a quality mindset, then Japan is the right market for you. However, if you're fixated on creating a product that is more, high consumer, tangible, then I'm not sure that Japan is right for you. With that said, probably one of the most successful brands here in Japan is a brand called Uniqlo, and Uniqlo is effectively producing. It's fast retailing. It's producing garments at a low price, constantly evolving, multiple seasons in a year, multiple SKUs, again at a competitive price, and they've done it, but they've also kept very close eyes on their quality. So you get a fantastic price product and very good quality. So, I think the reason that Japan has probably struggled a little bit is that they know they don't necessarily sacrifice quality. Quality is everything to them. And again, if you look at Lexus, for example, it's effectively Toyota, but it was Toyota wanting to create a more quality product, and it's been very, very successful. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. It's just, as long as you come with a quality mindset, then I think it's easy to then be on the same level of communication with Japan.
Mm-hmm. And do you see Japanese companies being successful, apart from those who you mentioned, on a global market at the same level, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been periods of time where it could be the Americas, it could be Europe. It's definitely come back again to Asia Pacific. I think most Japanese companies now are very focused on making Asia successful. I mentioned Uniqlo before. You can talk about the Dentsus of the world, such as the advertising companies, although they've become very global recently. So there are a lot of good examples. Toyota's a great example. Nissan's a great example. Honda's a great example. The automotive sector is very strong. And then there's a lot of health, medical related solutions here in Japan, which again, a lot of the world doesn't know about. As you'll know from your experience coming to Japan, I mean, the culinary experience, the food experience here is phenomenal. The way that they process food, the way they prepare food, the way they grow food, the agriculture is amazing. So, there are lots of things
and present it, right? Like presentation is also very, very important to them.
Exactly. So I think, there are definitely time and a place. Again, as we said earlier, the yen is at a very unique time. It's very weak at the moment, so that makes it very attractive for internationals to invest into Japan, and we're definitely seeing an influx of new investment into Japan. A lot, wouldn't say a lot more M&A, but definitely a lot more joint ventures and placements and real estate sector, automotive sector, health sector, technology, of course. So, yeah.
And would you say Japan is big on innovating in the areas of AI?
Definitely. I recently posed this question at a speech that I made down in Australia, was if you had to give one word to explain or define Australians versus Japanese. And the word for the Australians was inventive, and the word for Japanese was innovative. So when you take that away, you kind of think, okay, well, if a product could be developed somewhere offshore, but then you bring it to Japan, then Japan would just make it better. And in fact, exactly, it goes in, and exactly, and it also reminds me a lot of the early days and success that Apple's now enjoyed under Steve Jobs. Jobs made it very clear that one of the places he loved to come to in his early days of evolving Apple was Japan. So he would find that innovation. I guess you invent something, you innovate something. What's the next thing? I guess it's Apple. It's taking it and making it just that little bit better. And people, often people would make comments that a lot of what Apple created during Jobs' success was attributed to a lot of the feedback that he got from the Japanese market, including SoftBank. SoftBank was very much engaged in the iPhone in its early stages, models like 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, lots of processes, right? Like Kaizen, for example, have been invented in Japan, but then took to adapt in different markets or like iterated into like US, for example, right? But the foundation was always in Japan.
Yeah, it is, and it's. I mean, I love Japan.
I wouldn't guess. I wouldn't have guessed.
But there are times where you feel that they miss some opportunities. There are so many. You've been here, so you'll appreciate it. But there's so many unique processes and procedures that if they could be adopted externally, people would be amazed at them. So yeah, going back to one of the original questions you asked is what I would love to see is Japan become global. I'm not sure exactly what it is, and I'm sure it will take more than just my focus and many other great people that I work with each day. But it would be great to just take something that is Japanese, and I think we've had this discussion before in our personal conversations, that I think you have a bit of a passion for knives or related, right? So when you look at the amount of skill that goes into creating the blades, knives, and I just recently created a sake brand as a side interest, and for something that is made up of 4 or 5 ingredients, the amount of detail that the Japanese put into creating sake is just outstanding. So taking rice, water, some yeast, and some mold, and creating something that is purely bliss with a little bit of fruit additives is pretty special. So yeah. So hopefully we'll be able to find something that we can take to the world and give people a great experience that is made in Japan.
It's so difficult. Like with simple products, it's the most difficult to make them extraordinary, because you have to have huge focus on and perfect every little step of the way of the thing you are creating. Like Italians did with pasta as well, a few ingredients, or bread. You can have amazing and you can have a very bad bread, but the core ingredients are the same. It's always the skill of the craftsman as well.
Yeah, it's exactly, it's well said. And I think, hopefully we talked earlier about technology and the role that it plays. Hopefully we can use the technology, particularly, generative and in the future interactive AI, to help maintain some of those processes and procedures, helping future generations, hopefully, what is this? And you get this very detailed explanation of the process and the procedure and the craftsmanship, as you said. But yeah, it's an exciting time, and hopefully Japan will be able to benefit. I mean, we're definitely seeing the automotive industry is doing very well at the moment, as I mentioned earlier. Health industry is doing well, and I definitely think the technology industry will do well. We were having conversations with Lenovo about 3 or 4 months ago, and I asked the question of in terms of software creation for wearables like VR and AR type glasses, where are the best software engineers? Are they in India? Are they in China? Are they in America? Are they in Australia? And they said, no, they're here in Japan. They've been in Japan for 20 years. We recently were with Dell. Dell did their Asia Pacific conference here in Yokohama, just outside of Tokyo. And again, everyone was just, acknowledging just Japan's attention to detail. Particularly from, say, Dell and Lenovo are very similar, but from Dell's perspective about creating hardware and creating experiences that ultimately, when it comes to finishing it and making it just what it needs to be, those subtle nuances, Japan does very well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think technology can help those industries and areas of Japanese businesses which are unfortunately prone to, decreasing number of labor? I'm talking about, those traditional businesses, family-run businesses, which I'm sure you're aware that many founders struggle to expand because they don't have, maybe their sons or their family doesn't want to take over, and they don't have anyone who has the right amount of skill to keep the legacy.
Yeah, definitely. I think SoftBank has a legacy aspect not only with mobile phones but also with robotics, and definitely be using technology to create some kind of robotic aspect or element to the process. I think it's important. I think hospitality sector, Japanese have an incredible hospitality culturally in their DNA. And obviously with COVID now, hopefully well behind us, tourism is a big part of key markets, including Japan, and we definitely have seen those numbers. But same thing, they cannot maintain the service levels for, I think it's 30 million approximately tourists that come to Japan. It did in 19 actually, and I think already Japan looks like in 24 this year they'll probably go past 30 million. But there are challenges and demands that are placed on the service industry, and unfortunately, if someone doesn't get the same experience, then it can drop away pretty quickly. So that's where I think technology can help. If you look at, for example, check-in, check-out, if we talk hospitality, there's certain automation you can do in some of the food preparation, perhaps. There's lots of ways to do it. I think the reality is that a lot of people are still very scared about technology and the role that it should be playing or meant to be playing, rather than how it can infringe on people's livelihoods in terms of what someone does now, which technology might be able to do in the future. And we've definitely seen that with computer vision. Computer vision, obviously, with you can use it from a surveillance point of view, security point of view, identity point of view, access point of view. And in each case, those four that I just mentioned, they do have a huge or significant human element to them. But you can use computer vision, use technology to effectively allow those people that are currently working in any of those industries to then focus on something else, where the service level then gets put back up again. It's just a case of whether people want to be service related. I think Japan, it's just built in, as I said earlier, built in their DNA.
How do you educate those who are afraid of technology? How do you show them the opportunities it presents?
Yeah, that's like the best question so far. That's the best one. it's just demo and trial. I think once you get people to experience technology, it's so important, and we stress this so much, how important it is to do the right demo experience and the right trial experience. However, if you don't do it, then technology can be so overwhelming. It can be so intimidating. So, I think as long as you can put technology into some form of a demo or trial, and it doesn't have to be excessive. It can be 3, 4, 5 seconds. It doesn't have to be 3 or 4, 5 or 30 or 40, 50 minutes. So I think when people then get to trial it and test it themselves, a little bit like we talked about with AI before, get more interactive. I think if you can create that in your experience, then all the barriers go down pretty quickly.
But don't you feel like not all technology which is now developed should be developed? I mean, there are some aspects to it that people worry that it will alienate us even further, or make people. I'm talking mainly about metaverse and computer vision in a way, that people will start living in those different worlds instead of focusing what they have here.
Yeah, definitely. It's, again, a great question and a very relevant point. I think, with COVID, effectively for 2 years, we all became kind of very isolated, very detached. And we came out of that period then thinking, well, how do we continue to be people? So yeah, I think there is a danger. I think it has to be monitored. I think we as SoftBank particularly are very conscious of the human element, first and foremost, how it's used, as long as it's not having detriment. When we talk about generative AI, for example, I mean, you can ask any question, it gives you an answer. Now, whether the answer is right or wrong, it gives you an answer. So suddenly the thinking is taken away. So I do believe that all technology needs to have regulations and it needs to be governed to a certain degree, because otherwise, if the technology gets in the wrong hands, it can be used, in a negative way. But again, from experience, the last few years, I think every major technology player on the planet is very conscious of this social elements and social responsibility. And as a result, I think we slowed down in COVID. We haven't actually gone faster. Even if you look at what's happening with, the current generative AI phase, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of interest around it. But if you did not have generative AI, what other technology is there? We haven't really developed anything new. There's nothing that is, groundbreaking, if that's the right word to be using. So, I think there's a lot of noise at the moment around AI, in the sense that, to go back to your question, I'm taking a few minutes to get there, but it really comes down to the education. And I think, again, like we talked earlier with demo and trial, if you have the ability to educate people and in the right way, I think you will have success with AI. But if you don't, then it can, as you said, it can be seen as very intimidating. It can be distracting. It can be seen as alienating. I think you used that word. So yeah, it needs to be. But there's an education process, and the hard thing is that the people that make decisions, the people that spend on technology versus the people that use it, people that need it, whether they're elderly, younger, it's still very fragmented still. But definitely, technology used correctly is very exciting.
So you don't believe those headlines and people and some scientists screaming that we should slow down the development of, which is exponential if you think about how many more advancements and how many more releases of new versions are happening in a shorter and shorter period of time. Don't you feel like we are creating things in a faster pace than what we can even conceive and understand what kind of impacts it can have?
Yeah, totally. I think we need to slow down. I think there are, obvious social impacts in terms of what technology can have. Can take, for example, it can take people's jobs away, and then what does that
Yeah.
person do? What's their purpose in life? I think we have to be very conscious of the social issues. But as I said earlier, I think a lot of it's in the explanation, and a lot of it's in the branding. If we look at AI, we had the term predictive at the start, then generative, and as I mentioned, now we have interactive. But if you were to choose any one of those three words, which is the one that's probably most appealing, it's probably interactive, because I can be a part of it, I can shape it. Whereas generative was more about, okay, where's this coming from? And predictive was kind of, that's too fast. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an interesting time to be where we are. I think, to answer your question a bit more, I do think we need to regulate it. I think, we have to slow down a little bit. I think it's going a little bit too fast. I think I worry more about young people. I have a daughter, a 10-year-old daughter, who's just amazing. But she comes in contact with so much technology.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's just a personal remark, but sometimes that technology creates in her world that everything should happen now. There's
Mm-hmm.
no fact finding, there's no discovery, there's no learning, there's no positives and negatives. It's all it must happen now. So
Yeah.
effectively she is growing too fast, and not
Mm.
experiencing things that, don't get me wrong, in hindsight, if you could have made something go faster 20 years ago, fine. But yeah, I do believe that we have to slow things down just a little bit. Yeah.
Isn't it always the same for each generation? Each generation feels like the new generation's times are just speeding up, and you can't keep up, and then you have those stories where you have parents who are not able to send you a text, and they send you a MMS. I don't know, like some funny to you stories, but for them it's something normal. They just have it's just too much for them. It's just too complex. They haven't grown with it. Like I'm the generation where I was born before the internet. Like, okay, the internet existed, but not for the masses, right? I had my first mobile phone when I was 14, and that was a big deal. I was just, giving my friends in school, the Nokia Snake game to play, and I was the coolest girl in the school. But we somehow could experience the progression of it, and generation of your daughter, they have all those stimuli instantly attacking them, and it's so difficult for them, I think, to know the different type of living, like experiencing, learning, not knowing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Not knowing, experiencing, discovering. Maybe discovery is the good word, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think whether it be leaders, whether it be parents, same thing basically. It's our responsibility to try and maintain an environment where you can still discover and learn, and have your ups and downs.
Mhm.
I think the challenge that you have is there's just so much going on. There's so many devices, there's so many different ways to get access to the information, whether that was Web 1, 2, 3, the future 4, 5, 6, etc. So
Yeah.
I think each time that we go through these little, well, not little, they're significant technology evolutions or adjustments, people have to keep moving and adjusting. You make a really good point. I think if you're not aware of how to handle technology, then effectively technology almost, be careful what I say here, but technology almost becomes a detriment, in the sense that people question, what is it that I do, which
Yeah.
is really
What's my
sad.
value?
Yeah, exactly. you put on this earth to live for, I don't know, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, etc. And during that time, you leave a mark, whereas now you're leaving a code, or you're leaving, some kind
Data.
of,
Data.
you're leaving data, exactly. So, when you look at, for example, like what we can do now with 3D renderings, and it's incredible. There's so many things that are going on. But I do believe we have the ability to, I guess the crux of this part of the conversation is to slow down, a little bit, perhaps a lot actually, and try and then use technology and how it can make our lives better. We talked about before, like manufacturing, for example. Like nobody wants to be sitting in a factory and putting themselves into stressful situations on their bodies, for example, lifting items, changing machinery, changing parts. So again, I think using technology in the right way can be really exciting. But I had the experience the other day. I drove somewhere, and I'm listening the whole way to a Google map, or I'm watching my GPS, and if you told me now no maps, get home, I'd be like, I don't know how to get home. So
you cannot read the normal map on the paper.
No, but you know what I mean. Like it wasn't that long ago that you had a book in your car, and my daughter said to me the other day, and it reminded me of when I was a kid. If I had a question, there were a set of encyclopedias on the wall.
Yes.
And you would go to there, or my father would help me find the answer. Whereas now it's, okay, Google, what's the answer to this? Which you can hear in the background. I have Google set up through our house, so maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm the one that has created an environment where my daughter doesn't have to ask those questions of her papa anymore. So.
No, but that's what we were saying, that we want to be feeling useful, and like through learning, through our wisdom, we give this value, right? If technology takes it away, like where is going to be our place? Like where we will excel, where we will be better than technology.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic, consideration. I think, in my family, I have a beautiful sister who's an amazing designer, and spends time thinking about something in all the elements and colorings and structure and etc. Whereas, in the last couple of years, we've seen AI tools emerge so quickly, where effectively a designer, a creator, a marketer can effectively be replaced by the ability to use the tools. But even in that situation, I think that's what we have to look at, is these are tools, and if we can use those tools, we can become more efficient, more effective. That's the most important thing. The longer that you take the stance, I guess, to not use the tools, then that's probably where that anxiety, that feeling of, wow, what do I do, comes up very quickly. Yeah. But still, we still, I think, place value on conversation and interaction. That's why I keep coming back to this interactive element. I think if we can create technology that still requires the human element to be commanding it and interacting with it, then I think that can be really exciting.
Yeah, but that's what you said. We are excelling. We are good at, right? Like communication and relationships with other people. But what if we teach machines to do this for us? Don't we end up with machines conversing and interacting with other machines, and leaving us somewhere like as a robot, actually, as a recipient of the result of thinking and conversing?
Yeah, it's such an interesting conversation, and again, not to digress too far, but
No, we should.
in my family, I have I still, on my wife's side, I still have two beautiful in-laws, mother-in-law and father-in-law, who are still alive, and they're now well into their 80s. And a good example recently. My mother-in-law had an accident which required some reconstruction of her hips, but now she walks better. But she's effectively become like a robot, basically.
Yeah.
Parts of her body have
Bionic.
been replaced, and she's the first to say that the feeling and the discomfort that she had before the accident to now is better. So
Yeah.
again, it's quite scary to think that we actually become the robots. Which we're already seeing that in different phases of our lives. People are living longer. We're using technology to procure food differently. We're moving away to more to plant-based production versus animal-based. If I was an animal, I'd be worried. Okay, well, I know it wasn't a great
What's my
outcome.
value?
Exactly.
What's
So
my
this.
purpose?
So it's probably not just people asking the same question. I think there's lots of people, lots of things that are asking the same question. So, but the overall question that you're posing, I think we definitely need to be conscious and aware of technology and the role that it plays in our lives. That it doesn't make us feel like we're not relevant.
Yeah, but what kind of world would you imagine for your daughter to live in?
Hopefully, a happy and safe one. One that she can make decisions based on her own thinking and influences that people like myself, my wife, her family, friends have shaped. I think if it's purely just command based, then that certainly makes living a lot more sedentary, and that's definitely not healthy. Again, if we think about how we can use technology for her, to help her become hopefully more active, not become again sedentary, watching games and content and more content and more content and more
Yeah.
content. So, a thing I worry for younger people is just, you said it earlier, the speed. I mean, there's just so much going on, and they're influenced so much by what they hear, what they see, what they think they should be doing, to a point where when you pause just for a moment and ask a simple question, what do you want to do? The response, unfortunately, is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Because you don't explore it.
it wasn't that long ago where, well, if you don't know, go and find out, go and try and find it. And okay, you might get hurt a little bit, or you might encounter a challenge, or you find an incredible success. But definitely, definitely technology could take away a lot of that.
So what's the antidotum? Apart from slowing down, because I think it's in a way, maybe you feel so too, it's a wishful thinking. Because if you think of other countries like China, Europe in general, UK, US, they all compete against each other, and they all want to be. Nice sound. I can hear it. Do you want to take it or?
No, it's okay. Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's there you go. There's a piece of technology. It says piece of technology. That's the home experience here, where it's heating up my bathtub and telling me that it's ready to jump into. So
I love those Japanese. I love those Japanese inventions. Although it's been there for years, but I remember when I was last year in Nagoya, and I rented this apartment, and I could control from the kitchen the water temperature and all this stuff from my bathroom. And he was telling me like, in Japanese, but I kind of tried to translate, your water is ready.
Exactly.
It
So
was
that's
so cool.
So that's what you just heard there. So again, there's a good experience, good example of where technology can be really helpful.
But it's not invasive. You can turn it off.
Correct. And I think, to go back to your question, I think anyone who's involved in technology, yourself, myself, lots of the people that we that we interact with every day, and maybe even people who watch this in the future, is that we have a responsibility. It's up to us to put certain parameters in place where we create technology that definitely helps and makes hopefully lives easier and etc. But we also still have to sort of I don't like to use the word, but we definitely need to put the controls in place. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have the right to control people or what they want to do. If people want more technology, they have the right to do that. But I think we also have the responsibility to slow things down. And I definitely think there's a movement around that. I think COVID, most people would say they felt like they really slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually look at it, maybe COVID, for all the negatives, the positive was that it did force us to slow down a little bit. It made us stay remote. It kept us in different positions. But then we've come out of it, and now we're going fast. So it feels faster, but really the evolution is, on track as what it probably would have been in any other industrial era or something like that. But yeah, the point is, I think we need to be aware of making sure that technology doesn't just phase everybody out. So
That's the trickiest bit, I guess.
yeah, it is. Or if particularly, something to think about is that if that moral stance is such a strong part to us as people involved in technology, that perhaps we have the option to not be involved in technology and be involved in
Yeah.
more wholesome type activities, for example, agriculture or manufacturing, etc. But again, I think in terms of the role that technology is playing, and I keep coming back to this. AI, particularly as a subject matter, it's predictive, generative, and interactive. I think if we can be more focused on the interactive and allow people the opportunity to shape the technology,
Mm-hmm.
Put the parameters in place, put the governance in place, then I think it will be fine. And I definitely think we saw that recently as well. We saw that with Sam Altman and what that slight challenge that he had with Microsoft. It was communicated both ways.
Yeah.
Whether Microsoft wanted to go in a certain direction or Sam wanted to go in a certain direction, but they were fortunate that they worked it out. They probably had different agendas, but credit where credit's due to both Sam and Microsoft, that they were able to sort of come back to the table and put parameters in place. We've seen that.
The lawyers did it for them, I think.
Exactly. So it could be that it takes the lawyers. That's why we create the legal system to effectively put governance, etc., in place. I think even with Zuckerberg, particularly in Facebook, Facebook was face. It was a very sensitive word to be used, and they've evolved to become Meta, and then even with the use of data and a lot of the philanthropy that not only Zuckerberg has done, Gates and some of the lots of philanthropists around the world that they give back. A lot of what they create fiscally. A lot of it's media too. We don't get to hear a lot of these really amazing stories of philanthropy and what people like Gates have done for years, and even Musk is doing, and all of these amazing people in the world. One thing that comes to mind as I had this conversation with you is I do think we need more female perspective. I think it's
not
important.
only like minorities in general, right? Like people with different perspectives on things and problems.
Yeah, but if you look at, like I just mentioned 4 or 5 names, they're all men.
Of course. Why do you think is that?
I don't know the answer to the question. Maybe at time and place, the opportunities were different than what they were versus today. It's definitely the case. I mean, I'm excited at the same time for my daughter to be equal, to not have to worry about male prejudice or chauvinistic attitudes. But I still believe it would be great for us to have more female perspectives. I genuinely mean that. I think, we are, I think, I don't know exact number, but it's like 50-50. There's not like it's 80% men and 20% women. So I think, this is obviously a very delicate subject for some people to talk about. But for me personally, I would just love to see more female perspectives.
I appreciate you saying that.
I think no, it's not just about cosmetics. It's when I say cosmetics, I'm referring to like the appearance, because it's everything from the presentation to the nuances. And when I think about my last few years with SoftBank, and it's been an incredible journey so far, is that a lot of the successful products really took into account both sides, not just a male perspective. And then, of course, it took into age perspective, younger, older, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think, again, when you put technology with all of this global, gentrification and equality, it's a lot to take in.
Of course.
It's a really, really unique time. So, perhaps that's also the other thing. Men and women traditionally have different value sets, etc., and men who have shaped technology feel they have to create something. They have to. That's what men
Prove
do.
themselves.
Yeah. Whereas if we were to bring in more of a female, a woman's perspective, then it would be, perhaps as you're expressing today, would be, why don't we slow down? And again, I have to be careful, of course, because this gets put out there. But my understanding is, and again, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, but when you look at this recent altercation that existed with Microsoft and OpenAI, it also came down. There was a strong undertone of gender in terms of male sentiment versus female sentiment, et cetera, et cetera. But again, credit where credit's due. They were able to find, the sense. Hopefully I'm making some sense here.
It does. I had this thought that maybe the way Japan has managed to have those two different worlds coexist in a perfect harmony, the old traditional world where craftsmanship and this wabi-sabi and the concept of slow life exists and is celebrated versus the futuristic world. Maybe we should look up to how Japan has managed to do that. Of course, like we discussed, there are many aspects which could be improved and could be more open to renegotiate. But when we think about what's going to happen and how we are trying to find our value and our place in the world in this fast-paced, ever-changing technology, I guess maybe Japan has some learnings for us.
Yeah, it does. And again, for anyone that watches this after we've finished, it's I think what there's approximately 200 countries on the planet, but there's 5 or 10 that dominate. Japan definitely brings an easiness, a sense of cultural aspect into everything that they do. There's very few products that are created here that are not really conscious of the consumer in terms of functionality and features and benefits. And it's really, everything is created around the consumer. Everything is about functionality. At the same time, there are certain things that, probably need to be created a bit more in the masses. And Japan could probably take some learnings from that. We said it earlier, I think, there are different phases, right? There's the inventive phase, the innovative phase. I guess what's the other word that basically we
satisfaction phase?
Yeah, exactly. But maybe it's the intuitive phase, where we take common sense, not machine learning, not AI. We take common sense to effectively define the final outcome. I think we're kind of having the same conversation here, but it really is, we are we have to be responsible on how technology plays a part in our lives.
Which is not something which usually America and Silicon Valley is advocating for, right? Like move fast and break things kind of movement.
Yeah, well, there's I think the most common expression at the moment is fail fast.
Fail fast, yeah.
That's a common expression that I hear when I have the opportunity to travel or meet particularly people from the United States.
But I guess there is so much at stake right now, right? Those new technologies being created are much more powerful than what we were, dealing with earlier. Or you wouldn't say so?
I think it's like mobile phones. I mean, it's most people, if you ask the question, what is technology, they would say, oh, software, hardware. That's generally the two responses, right?
Yeah.
But we now became very platform based, operating systems for phones. Now we've got operating systems for AI. So the whole platform model has become very, very much to the front. And again, if you look at, for example, in the gaming world, like Pokemon, you're probably familiar with Pokemon. It's a massive export out of Japan. It operates off a company called Niantic, but Niantic is purely a platform. It's an environment that was created so that developers effectively could go in there and produce and create, a gaming experience. I don't have the answer, but if we use AI as the talking point, which is really exciting. We've gone from predictive to generative. They still will exist, but if you can create a range of products that is interactive, then I think you then have the ability for people to switch off or change the speed or as long as you keep those options, that governance within, then I think we're okay.
Yeah. This is something which I don't know if you've seen. There was a AI safety summit in the UK beginning of December. And Elon Musk was invited as well, and he was speaking with Prime Minister about putting emphasis on making sure that you can switch off machines, software, especially robotics, when you come into contact with humans, like physically. You want to make sure that when something goes wrong, you have the red button.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember seeing. Well, not remember. It's like it's only recent, but I did see like a synopsis of like a summary of that particular event, which I thought was really exciting because effectively it's the EU, Europe, Greater Europe, etc., that staged the first one of those. So I think the sentiment that you have, which I share with you as well, is exciting because it shows that it actually is coming from Europe. Which it didn't. The first one wasn't staged in Asia Pacific or in the Americas; it was staged in Europe. So there's probably a movement there, and I think some of the unfortunate geopolitical type situations that you've had. I mean, recent issues in Israel and recent issues in Ukraine. I think Europeans traditionally are probably more aware of trying to keep harmony, in an otherwise challenging environment. So I think the event that you mentioned earlier was great because it was, we do need to put rules and regulations and governance in place so that it gives people the opportunity to, as we would use with computer vision, opt in or opt out,
Yeah, but it's very tricky to to balance this line because you don't want to over-regulate. Because usually the sentiment is that when you regulate, it will serve better those big guys, the big tech companies who are already, having enough legal, let's say, assistance to navigate through those challenging, like regulatory laws, while preventing startups and small companies from doing the same.
Yeah, I mean it's a very good point. I think I think there's different views and stances on that. I think depending on the market, big is better. That's not always the case, of course. I think in different markets, including Japan, where there's the more emphasis on the startup. I mean, we often get that Japan doesn't have a startup culture or a system, which is actually not true. It's incredible how many.
Go on. Sorry, I just want to have a. No, I just remember when I was we were meeting as part of the 500 Global program. We were meeting with lots of different representatives, like from Toshiba and others, and they were claiming that startup company for them is a company which raised at least 10 to 50 million, which is not something which you would see in Europe. Like they don't have, or at least from the people whom we talked to or heard from, the concept of pre-seed, seed doesn't exist. For them, it's still it's not a company. It's not a thing.
Yeah, I think obviously we talk about bootstrapping, for example, companies and different language, of course. I think it does exist. It's just that in terms of relevance to big corporates, as you said, funding of the circa 10, 15 million US dollars. But there are definitely many, many companies, many different types of businesses, small businesses, startups that, start up with hundreds of dollars, maybe tens of thousands of dollars versus millions of dollars. I think you're right, though, when you do talk to the big corporates, they probably will reply like that because at the end of the day, if it's from their investment side off their P&L, it's still the same amount of work and effort for them, and I think as a result, the word startup or new business, etc., is probably not as relevant. Not relevant. It's not as people are aware of it. But yeah, there's definitely a lot. There's lots of different small businesses, startups. They just are not tagged as that. I think it's probably just a different language, actually.
Right, could be, yeah. And I was so excited to see how much of the excitement there is in Tokyo, especially how many people are trying to change, to improve, and I think there's still not enough spotlight on those smaller players because they can shape our future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really exciting. I mean, as I said earlier, like the last 4 years, the first COVID years were tough. Last 2 years was more about correction and consolidation. I was traveling just the last few days. You can feel the energy. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of people are very curious about Japan because I think we all got to see each other again, different ways, how we handled COVID, how we didn't handle COVID, et cetera, et cetera. But again, we've got in Japan at the moment, an administration, a government that is very much about encouraging Japan to go global. I think that goes back to a few previous administrations, including Abe-san and Koizumi. These are names, but they're it's not just been happening for the last 3-4 years. It's been happening for the last 10, 15, 20 years. I think the success of Japan in the future, though, will be probably a bit more related to joint ventures. I think for those like yourselves or people even like myself, even though I've been here a long time, if you can find the right Japanese partner, then the world is your oyster. There's ways to export Japan out and then bring things in, and finding those right partners is probably the missing piece at the moment.
Yeah, I think it applies to everything, right? To your personal life as well. If you get married to the right partner, you can achieve much more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely more you can do in partnership than on your own, right? So the one thing that I think the Japanese are very good at is collaborating. They work well together in teams and in collaborative environments. So a lot of it's set up to be successful. Obviously, like many things, communication can sometimes be a challenge, but I've always been very bullish on Japan, but particularly at the moment, I think um, as the world goes faster, like we talked about, there's still people still want quality, you know. Um, and as long as you're looking for quality, then Japan is your place. That's where you need to come. So
That's where you are with your sake and your new venture, which
yes,
hopefully
we'll
I will
hopefully.
find out soon.
Yeah, no, hopefully in the next few months we can talk more about it. Happy to chat again and share with you, probably I'd love to keep the conversation going about how to not only bridge the cultural aspects between, say, you and Europe, here I am in Japan, but more about the whole pace thing you mentioned. How do you take the speed and make it a positive rather than, being seen as potentially
Scared.
a scared, yeah, scary thing, detrimental, intimidating, daunting, all these negative words. If you can change the narrative to it. So I guess that's where probably a question for you maybe is what do you see as emerging as technology in Europe versus, say, Asia?
And we will leave this for our next episode because yeah, it's a longer question, but thank you so much for this, and we will definitely explore more in depth your current project in a few months when time allows.
I mean, my passing comment for you, or to catch up again, is thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate your passion for
Thank
um,
you.
this part of the world and the ability to really just communicate. It's such a great skill and talent that you have. And for anyone that is listening to this, if you do need anything, just reach out, and I'm always happy to try and share insights and experiences. Again, I think 2024 will be a great year. Um, I've said it a few times already. Let's just think of the interactive. Everything we think of, let's think of how to interact and how to get people, shaping and being a part of technology.
And if you want to reveal a bit about more about your sake, with like, how is the process? Like, how is the production going?
Yeah, so we've literally got the team in from the United States. So the product launches in the United States in April.
Wow.
First production has been completed. We are now
How many
planning.
how many bottles?
We did a few. We did a few. It's been received very well.
Okay. Well done.
And we're now planning actually for 25 and 26. So
Mm,
we've got, it's going really well. And the team in the United States are just fantastic. They're incredibly aware, very, very, very in tune with what is required. And the taste is good. And the whole branding, the whole exercise, the naming,
amazing.
it's really perfect. They've done an incredible job, and we're lucky to be involved.
Okay, save one bottle for me, please, so we can do kampai.
I will definitely. Well, thank you so much for today, and again, look forward to us catching up again in the future.
Likewise, Paul, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.